Welcome again to Book and Adaptation, where I review a book and some adaptation. Whatever, you know the drill. So it's 3 in the morning, I'm running on Snapple fumes, and I just got home from the midnight release of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. I'm gonna do this as best I can. Oh god, this is gonna take forever. Wake up! Okay, so I'm a huge Harry Potter nerd, but I did not in fact dress up for the movie release. For the Deathly Hallows book release, I went with a group of equally nerdy friends and they made me dress up as Cho Chang, token Asian. This time I just settled for wearing Hermione's time turner. Hang on, I'll get it. Which is very cool. And it spins. And using Harry's wand to hold up my hair. Pretty cool, right? I'm a nerd. Which I'm going to put up now. Ugh. Okay. So, my theater was kind enough to re-release Part 1, so I got to see them back to back. And now I'll probably treat them as one rather long movie, because why on earth would you see them separately if you had the opportunity to see them both? Plus at this time of the morning, or night, or whatever, I'm not sure I can tell you where Part 1 ended and Part 2 began. We'll see. And actually that's probably an important thing to note, because for me, in sequels, and especially in trilogies, it's really important that the other films can hold up on their own. In this case, these movies are pretty much entirely dependent on the films that came before. But really in any instance, I believe you should never watch a series out of order. Except maybe Star Trek. Then just do 2, 4, 6, and honestly 7, because I grew up with Next Generation and really it wasn't that bad. Maybe 8, and then forget the rest. Except of course the 2009 unhelpfully titled Star Trek. Best reboot ever. And really you should watch the original motion picture just because it is so classically absurd in its special effects and pacing thereof that you should be familiar with it simply as sci-fi pop culture legend. Where the hell was I going with this? In Deathly Hallows, we're faced with an actual two-parter, a story that is purposefully designed and written as 2 separate movies, which is basically unprecedented. There are sort of similar instances— I gotta stop playing with that, spins. There are sort of similar instances of stories being split. Say that 3 times fast. But I defy anyone to name a successful one. The ones that are coming to mind for me are The Matrix and Pirates of the Caribbean, both instances where the first movie was a complete and whole story and wonderfully executed, and then it was too popular and they threw money at it and said make more, and so you get these 2-part disasters that are still being written as they actually start filming. But none of this has to do with adaptations. Sorry. Moving on. Let me take a minute here to say that everything in this video is all mixed up in my head and will not be following the normal book adaptation movie organization. I don't think there's going to be any kind of organization. Where the hell was I going? So bear with me. Let's talk briefly about the scale, the sheer scope of this project, the franchise in its entirety. This is a 7-part saga, which becomes 8 when you split the last installment. There's basically been nothing like it in the past. There's Star Trek, as previously mentioned, a franchise that has now spanned 30 years, but it doesn't have anything like the same linear progression. They're all really separate stories. And then there's Star Wars, if you count episodes 1 through 3. Please, let's not. And all the Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th movies, which I'm not familiar with, but I assume that they're all standalone stories, basically. My area of expertise does not extend to horror. I'm really bad with horror. And then there's Bond, which again is not something you have to watch in order. That's a really great concept, basically. No continuity. You've just got the same character spanning 45 years and 6 different actors, and you just change the bad guys and the gadgets to keep up with the times. That's a hell of a franchise. And then MGM went bankrupt! Still, I should look into doing some Ian Fleming adaptations. God, back to Potter. Okay. So we have 8 films over 10 years with the same cast. That in itself is incredible, plus a lot of the same crew. All the adaptations save one were written by the same person. Right, let's talk about the books real quick. J.K. Rowling created this amazing world that's rich in its characters and the rules and architecture surrounding how magic physics work. Does that make any sense? Harry's story is really intriguing and smart, but even without it, just the environment she created for her protagonist is astounding. And Harry's story is very engaging. Rowling's writing style is really open and welcoming to younger readers, I feel, but also really smart and something all ages can appreciate. For me, at least as an adult reader, I didn't find any of her writing patronizing or obviously toned down for younger audiences. But actually she is, in a way, writing a lot of philosophy here. Because the whole of Harry's story is really good and evil, choosing what is right instead of what is easy, self-sacrifice. There's a lot of pretty heavy stuff in there and she makes it accessible to younger readers. Also from a publishing standpoint, it's pretty interesting because Rowling was basically a pioneer in young adult novel length, championing a lot of other authors just by proving that kids are able and willing and have the attention span to read through something this size. It made it possible for other authors to publish longer novels without having to split their stories into trilogies or quadrilogies or whatever. One of my favorite authors growing up was Tamara Pierce, whose complete story arcs would come split up in books of 4. Following Rowling's success, she's able to publish longer, fewer volume split works. Okay, so I've read each of these books at least a couple times. Of my favorite book, Prisoner of Azkaban, I'm a sucker for time travel stories. I have 3 copies. I have 3 copies. The English, French, and American translation. Yes, it is American, because apparently we're all idiots and need English mum translated to mom. And what the hell happened with the Sorcerer's Stone? Philosopher's Stone. It has a pre-existing basis in magical alchemical history. It's a brilliant reference to integrate into this world Rowling has created. Sorcerer's Stone? I am also extremely well versed in the books because I have all the audiobooks, because they are read by Jim Dale, who's a phenomenal voice actor and does something like 150 voices for these books. And sometimes I like to fall asleep listening to his voice, so I know these pretty well. I actually used to do that with Shatner reading his autobiography on tape when I was little. That's weird, right? Okay, let's talk movies. Try and skip over the last 6 and get to this one, or 2, or whatever. Is it? Yeah. Steve Kloves wrote the first 4 movies, and then took a break, which he later admitted regretting, and then came back for 6 and 7, 8. It's a pretty remarkable continuity, and I don't think the series would have worked without it. Kloves worked closely with Rowling on each screenplay. Goldberg worked with her as well. Michael Goldberg wrote Order of the Phoenix, by the way, sorry. And while she did have final say on the script, apparently she gave them a lot of elbow room, really understanding how much might need changing for the adaptation. A lot of it isn't gonna make it in, there's just too much there. Look at the size of this! And then original content has to go into it to make the movie work without everything that's missing. I think a lot of authors can really struggle with this concept, and apparently J.K. Rowling is just amazing with it. So, Deathly Hallows in particular. This last movie was quite literally epic in the original meaning of the word. It gets thrown around a lot these days, I throw it around a lot these days, but Harry's story is an epic. In the footsteps of the Odyssey and the Iliad, the telling of his hero's journey. And this last film is the culmination of everything that has happened to him, everything that leads up to this massive battle. And we get the whole movie for this epic boss battle, if you will, because there have been 7 movies leading up to it. Plot and character development, everything, leading up to this non-stop, action-packed, gut-wrenchingly emotional finale. It's unprecedented. You can't have that much stuff, that much action and drama in one standalone movie. It'd be absurd without the 6 movies of backstory to support it. Mind blown, in case you haven't already noticed. And heartbroken, but I'll get to that later. Adaptation-wise, this movie probably took the most license from the book, but I think that's fair because there's just too much to deal with. There were, however, several parts that skewed so far from canon that I was sitting in the theater literally saying out loud, what? Thankfully sitting next to other nerds having the same reaction. Special level of hell. At this point in the evening or morning, I'm so far past spoilers. Deal with it. One instance was when all the grown-up good guys appeared in the Great Hall, in the middle of Snape's Harry Potter information shakedown of all the students. I guess it worked just to introduce them in the movie at all, though in the book they were sort of a surprise reinforcement just when the staff and students of Hogwarts needed it most, but I'll let it slide. A change that I did like, loved it actually, was Ron and Hermione's kiss. The movie breaks third-person narrative voice, following Harry as our protagonist and viewpoint character, to instead follow Ron and Hermione down into the Chamber of Secrets to get a basilisk fang to destroy the Hufflepuff cup. The Hufflepuff cup. That one Horcrux. They barely get away with their lives, and in the momentary pause between one mortally dangerous situation and another, finally get a kiss, and Harry wasn't witness to it like it was in the book. I loved that it was an entirely Ron and Hermione moment, and the crowd went wild. Okay, so the biggest hurdle for this adaptation had to be the after-death scene with Dumbledore.